Chapter 4. Your wing looks better, I said eventually. Zed seemed like he was coming out of deep water, so to speak.
It does, doesn't it?
He agreed, moving it gingerly. Some of the feathers had started to grow back, making the wing look fuzzy, and it was folded across his back like the other one.
I guess doing nothing was the best way to handle it,
he said. How did you get it to go straight again without using magic? I asked, making him blush.
It was an accident. It got caught on a rock on the mountains, and it wrenched itself back into place.
I winced. I'd had my knee dislocated before, so I knew what it was like to have it set. Suddenly, my hamster started running on its wheel.
What was that?
Zed asked, jumping slightly. My hamster, Snowball, I said, pointing at the cage by the foot of my bed. I walked over and opened Snowball's cage. I got a treat from a nearby shelf and coaxed her into the open. Before she could run away again, I gently scooped her up. I walked back over to Zed and showed her to him.
It's so tiny,
he said. She's a dwarf hamster. They're smaller than normal, I explained.
Can I hold her?
He asked. Sure, this is how you make sure you don't hurt her, I started. For the next few minutes, I explained how to hold a hamster to Zed. Then I tipped my hands towards his, so she scurried down and curled up in his palm. We were silent for a while.
Caroline,
he said finally.
Do you still want to know what's in that book?
Like I said earlier, only if you want to share whatever's in it with me.
You go get it. I'll put this cutie back,
he said. I walked over to my bookshelf and picked up the book. Then I headed back over to my bed and stared at the cover, my gaze fixated on the smooth black rock in the center.
Okay, here goes,
he said, sitting across from me and taking the book. He pressed his palm to the rock in the center, and I watched in awe as it turned from black to purple.
It should all be in English now,
he said thoughtfully. He opened it to the first page and squinted at the writing.
Can you read it to me?
He asked suddenly.
I never got the chance while it was in Greek, and I'm not very good at reading English.
Don't you angels have the power to automatically understand all languages or something? After all, you can speak English, I said.
We all learn the most influential languages, but would you want to waste magic for reading when you can use it for other things? It's not as if I have an unlimited supply. It takes days for magic to replenish once you use it all,
he said hotly. Don't get all hot under the collar. I was just asking. When I'd studied the book more closely, I realized that the first page was different than what I remembered. The first page changed.
Of course. Daniel enchanted the book so that it tells the story of the person that touches the gem on the front cover. When the gem is black, it usually tells the entire history of the universe. Do you really want to know the universe's entire history?
He asked sarcastically. Actually, that'd be awesome! Do you know how many theories we've come up with to explain—
Anyway,
he continued, cutting me off.
This is now my entire history, because I touched the gem. Go on.
Ignoring the sudden condescending tone to his voice, I looked down at the book and began to read. About halfway through the War for Empyrean, the captain of Lestraus's guard, Daniel, went on a mission to defeat Thanatos, god of death, and destroy the Lake of Shadows. The lake's sole purpose was to help increase the number of troops in Hades' army, and it had the ability to make a shadow copy of whatever touched it. These shadows would then follow Hades' every order, aiding in his quest to take over Empyrean. In order to destroy the lake, Daniel had to jump into the lake himself and pull the plug at the bottom. Why Thanatos, who was actually very clever, put a plug in his magical lake, nobody ever found out. When Daniel returned from the bottom, another angel inevitably surfaced from the other side. Thanatos seemed to expect this new angel to be evil, since Daniel is so reliably good, and this new angel was a shadow copy. But the lake had drained before the copy was complete. True to the nature of the lake, this new angel, who called himself Zed, was a near-perfect copy of Daniel, but was different as well. As a mirror image of sorts, his personality was opposite, or near opposite, to that of Daniel. Zed helped Daniel defeat Thanatos, though it is believed he had an ulterior motive for doing this. After the battle, Zed ran off deeper into the Amazon rainforest. Originally a shadow, Zed became flesh and bone, though the cause is unknown.
I think you can skip the rest of this,
said Zed.
It's mostly about my wanderings in the world of mortals, my persecution by Daniel and Ostrausa, things like that.
He said with a sigh. I reluctantly closed the book, only because I didn't want to seem like a snoop. The truth? I wanted to know everything I could about this boy and the world he belonged to. Who wouldn't? My world was turned upside down when I first met him. The book kept mentioning shadows. What are they? I asked.
They're beings that are made completely out of darkness. Erebus, god of darkness, created them to fight for Hades and help him rule the underworld. They're weak to light and can disguise themselves as an object's shadow. Because of that, we call them shadows.
He explained. Okay, why aren't you still a shadow?
Why do you ask so many questions?
He countered. When did you become friends with Daniel? I asked, switching to a safer topic.
Not exactly friends, more like grudging acquaintances. But in any case, at one time, Daniel was captured by Hades. And when I say capture, I mean frozen in a block of ice.
How? I asked, mystified. Zed rolled his eyes.
Daniel always had more muscle than brain between his ears. I'm not sure how it happened, but I'm sure it was easy,
said Zed.
He was kept like that for nearly 10 years.
As Zed continued, he started staring into space, as if looking at something only he could see.
For some reason, Lestrausa couldn't get to the underworld to help him herself. So, eventually, I decided to go save him. I don't know why I did it. I suppose I was just lonely, desperate.
He said. Zed was looking down at his hands now.
I've always been an outcast, even after I saved Daniel. I guess I was just too different from Lestrausa's oh-so-perfect little angel.
He said bitterly. I know the feeling, I said, staring off into the distance. My list of friends was incredibly short, and I always seemed to be that one person who was always picked last.
Do you really? Even though I'm allowed to live in Lestrausa's palace, only Megacosm ever really talks to me, and she never stays very long. Wherever I go, people are always looking down on me, as if I'm nothing but trash. Even though I decided to help Daniel fight the bringer of death, the only thing he says to me is that he can handle it. I don't think anyone can empathize with what I go through daily, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone, Zed
said fiercely. I'm sorry, I didn't know, I whispered. I didn't mean to make him angry.
No,
he sighed.
I'm sorry. You didn't do anything. I'm just really frustrated, and I took it out on you.
Zed looked away, a tinge of red once again spreading across his face.
Do you mind if I take a shower? I hate feeling sticky like this,
he said, sloppily changing the subject. Yeah, of course, I said awkwardly, getting up and handing him a towel. Down the hall, first door on the right. As long as my parents think it's me that's taking a shower, they shouldn't bother you. As he walked off, I contemplated why Zed had trusted me with a piece of his history. I must be the first person that he's been able to call his friend, other than this Megacosm person. Or at least, I hope so. I certainly think of him as a friend. I looked down at the book, and an idea started forming in my head. It shows the history of the person that touches the gem, right? He showed me his history. It's only fair that I show him mine. I pressed my palm firmly against the gem. I waited 1 minute, then 2. Maybe you need to be magical for it to work, I thought, disappointed. I waited another minute, just to be sure, before taking my hand off of it. As soon as I lifted my hand, the purple gem started glowing and turned a bright blue. I smiled at my accomplishment and opened the book to the first page. I looked down at what must be my history, but I couldn't tell. It was once again in Greek. Although I couldn't read what it said, the first page most likely said something about me being born in Gainesville, Florida, sometime in August. I was about to turn 14, it being June and all. Most people wouldn't guess that, though, because I looked and acted like I was older. It seems to read the thoughts of the person who touched the gem. Then it changes to show that person's history and suit their needs. Since I wanted Zed to be able to read it, it changed to Greek, I reasoned. I set the book carefully on my nightstand and waited for Zed to return from the shower. After a while, I started to get the sensation that I was being watched, just like I had the previous night. I spun around to face the window, and was just in time to see a stunned face disappear from view. I gave a yelp of surprise, and nearly fell off my bed. I only had a second to look at the boy, but there was no doubt in my mind that he was Daniel, Zed's double. I opened the window, even though I was sure he was already gone. "Daniel?" I asked cautiously. There wasn't a response, only the sound of wing beats fading into the night. When Zed returned to the room, he only had to look at me to know that I was shocked.
"What is it?"
he asked, looking alarmed. "I think I just met your twin," I told him, pointing towards the window.
"Daniel was here?"
he asked, sounding outraged. "I only saw him for a second, but he was there," I said uneasily. Zed started tugging at his hair, and his teeth were clenched.
"I can't believe him. I've been stranded here for what, a week now? And he's been here, but he doesn't even come to tell me the news. He eavesdrops, yes, but... Ah!"
he yelled. Nervously, I touched one shoulder. "Calm down," I said softly. Slowly, his breathing eased, and he sunk back onto the bed.
I can't believe this,"
he said quietly. I remained silent, gazing at him.
"He knows how much being kept in the dark aggravates me, too."
Slowly, nervously, I sat next to him and let my head sink onto his shoulder. He jumped slightly, obviously surprised at the gesture, but didn't move away. Once a few awkward moments passed, his good wings slowly wrapped around me, as if he were nervous too. I felt like I was on fire, every atom of my being painfully aware of his proximity. I knew exactly where every one of his feathers brushed against my skin, and I could feel my hair stir slightly to the rhythm of his breathing. Zed must have felt something similar. He sighed quietly, and I felt a tremor run through his body. Being so close to him made me feel more alive than I ever had before, but even so, I was the first to break away. "What are we doing?" I whispered. "I can't like you. I don't have wings, and you can't stay here forever. You're probably thousands of years older than me, too." Zed seemed like he was going to protest, but then he nodded stiffly and got up, moving towards the window.
"I'll be back tomorrow night, I think. I have to look for Daniel before he gets too far,"
he said, voice flat. He opened the window and was halfway out of it when I remembered the book. "Wait!" I exclaimed suddenly. I picked up the book and offered it to him. "You let me see part of your history, so it's only fair you get to read mine," I said. He looked down at the book, and then back up at me, and gave me a small smile.
"Okay,"
he said. He nearly whispered the word. He took the book from me and stowed it under his arm.
"See you tomorrow."
He hopped out the window and disappeared, and I reluctantly closed the window behind him.